Psalms now. The Psalms, in the Christian tradition, they're called the Psalter also. There are 150 of them, although in the Septuagint, a Greek version of the Old Testament, there's also 151st Psalm. And sometimes the Psalms are called the Songbook of the Second Temple, because these really are not just poems, they're songs. And they're written for performance. And sometimes they have directions, to the leader. Like in Psalm 9, to the leader, according to Muth Laben. Now, what is Muth Laben? I don't know what that is, but I assume that the leader knew what that was. It might have been a tune or a beat. And so the Psalms are really meant for singing, and often they make beautiful music when they are put to song. A lot of the Psalms are attributed to David. I don't want to just spend too much time on issues of authorship. We read in the stories of David that he was a player of the lyre or the harp, and that he wrote songs, and so it makes sense that he would have written some of these and that they would be passed down. Some of these give indications what type of song they are. So let's look at Psalm 90. This one says it's a prayer of Moses, the man of God. This is very interesting, because here we have a psalm attributed not to David but to Moses, which would make it a really, really ancient psalm. Sometimes we find out their purpose in worship, so let's look at Psalm 92. This one is a song for the Sabbath day, you see. And sometimes they come with musical directions. So if we look at 88, this is like the one, kind of like the one we just looked at, to the leader according to Mahalath Leanoth. I probably said that wrong, but and Psalm 81, let's look at that one. According to the Gittith. So we can see from these, that these songs had tunes that people seem to have known, and they had purposes that seem to have been at least somewhat commonly understood among Israelite people. So they're not really meant to be, their function, first and foremost, isn't to be read, it's to be performed. Now, if you think about this, it makes sense, because at the time the Psalms were written, there's not really any such thing as silent reading. There's a story about Augustine, theologian of the 4th and 5th century, who walks in on his teacher, Ambrose, and Ambrose is holding a book in his lap, and his lips are moving, but he's sending out the words in his head, but he's not speaking the words. And Augustine wants to know why he's doing this. He goes through all these reasons why Ambrose would be what we would call reading silently. And what that shows us is that even as late as the 4th and 5th centuries AD, that reading was primarily something that people did out loud, and it was strange to see someone read silently. So we have something like the Psalms, that just reinforces the fact these are meant to be sung and at least said out loud. The Psalms also speak to the range of human emotions. So if we look at Psalm 23, for example, that's probably the most famous of all Psalms, isn't it? The Lord is my shepherd. Yeah, that's a great psalm. So there's a psalm that kind of expresses trust in God. If we look at Psalm 13, it's a different story. How long, O Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long must I bear pain in my soul and have sorrow in my heart all day long? How long shall my enemy be exalted over me? And then there's Psalm 137, which is a psalm of lament and rage. It's a story about being in captivity in Babylon. By the rivers of Babylon, there we sat down and there we wept when we remembered Zion. On the willows there we hung up our harps, for our captors asked us for songs and our tormentors asked for mirth, saying, sing us one of the songs of Zion. And at the end of it, O daughter of Babylon, you devastator, happy shall they be who pay you back what you have done to us. Happy shall they be who take your little ones and dash them against the rock. So again, I want to emphasize the Bible doesn't support everything it reports, but the Psalms do. So I don't think the fact that this last part about the babies is in the Bible makes it okay. I think what it's doing is it's reporting, it's giving voice to rage, and that's a part of human life. People become wounded. People become angry. And we simply have to be honest about this. And one of the things I love about the Old Testament is that it doesn't pull any punches about the kind of frailty of human beings and the ways in which we mess up. There's not so much of an idealized portrait of the human being. And even, really great figures from Israel's history like David and Moses, they really mess up sometimes. Okay, any questions about the Psalms so far? Okay, there are various ways to talk about the categories of the Psalms. Fee and Stewart have some of their categories. When were these brought together? That is a very good question. Like, when did we get this songbook of the Second Temple as like this? It's a guess. People say, some scholars say between 300 BC and 100 AD. AD seems very late to me. Doesn't mean they weren't written before then. It means a collection was brought together. Okay. Obviously, some of these are much, much older than that. Songs about the Babylonian exile are from the 6th century. So, sometimes we get psalms of lament and Psalm 22. It's interesting that Psalm 22 is a psalm of lament, just preceding Psalm 23, which is a psalm of trust. And here is what Jesus spoke when he was dying on the cross. My God, why have you forsaken me? Jesus is quoting from the psalm. Why are you so far from me? It's a psalm of lament. Some of these are individual prayers. Some of these are community prayers. And they can point to any range of problems like physical distress or fear or betrayal or abandonment. Personal lament is Psalm 22. Communal lament, let's look at Psalm 74. This is probably an exilic psalm, Babylonian exile period psalm. Oh God, why do you cast us off forever? Why does your anger smoke against the sheep of your pasture? Now, did you read the section in Fee and Stewart about sheep? What they said about sheep? You know, it's interesting that the people of Israel would compare themselves to sheep. Because if you've ever spent time around sheep, sheep are extremely dumb animals, and they can't, but so what are they getting across by that? Well, one of the things might be, they're not saying that they themselves are dumb, but the sheep without the shepherd are done for. Mm-hmm. And so, and at one point in the New Testament, Jesus sees the people and he has compassion on them, because they are like sheep without a shepherd. So they're lost, they're done for. And so I think what Israel is saying, every time they compare themselves to sheep, is without God, their shepherd, they're done for. They absolutely depend on God. And so in this communal lament, they're saying to their shepherd, upon whom they absolutely depend, oh God, why do you cast us off forever? Sometimes when we're going through periods of difficulty in life, something that can be really helpful is to read through some of the Psalms of Lament, read them out loud, and allow our own lamentations to be voiced through the words of the psalmists. Okay, why don't we take a break right here and we'll pick up on the second part of the Psalms in just a minute.